Welcome to Soul Searching, the Soul Recruitment Podcast, where we tackle all sorts of great topics in the areas of recruitment, job searching, mindset, technology, marketing, culture, and lots more. It's amazing what you'll pick up. Thanks for joining me. Welcome back, everyone. Darren Saul here, your host of Soul Searching, the Soul Recruitment Podcast. It's episode 55, and I have the workplace whisperer, Steve Sharp, here with me today. How are you doing, Steve?
Good. How are you?
Very, very well. The
Excellent.
Workplace whisperer. I love that.
Yes, it was tagged to me. I don't know. It was a while back now, but it seems to have stuck.
No, it's fantastic. And as you can guess, we're going to be chatting about workplace environment, team building, culture, and the fact that discretionary effort is your holy grail. So with over 20 years of leadership experience, managing divisions of up to 600 people and overcoming personal challenges like depression and anxiety, Steve offers unique insights into transforming workplace environments. With a blend of the 3 leadership habits and the SHARPEN Traits, combined with an empathetic and get stuff done approach, Steve helps business leaders foster daily innovation, productivity, and honesty within their teams. Known for his pragmatism, Steve provides leaders with ways to curate workplace environments that attract, motivate, and retain people and help leaders get their life back. That's why Steve is known as the workplace whisperer. So the only thing about anyone's business that cannot be replicated or copied is its people and the environment in which they work. Discretionary effort is the holy grail of modern day business owners. Steve Sharp will be breaking down the why, what, and how to create a workplace environment that becomes your competitive advantage over time. Well, I got through that. Well done.
Now that's a mouthful, isn't it?
I got through that, but it was all really good stuff. So I wanted to keep it, pure.
Yeah, cool.
But mate, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, mate. It's I'm really glad that I bumped into you a few weeks ago, and I get the opportunity to have a chat to you.
Oh, absolutely, me too. And I love talking about this stuff because we were just talking offline. Actually, I work in recruitment, and the market is getting more candidate short every day. And you said to me, you know what? It's absolutely a testament to the companies and how they're really retaining their staff. So, which is true. And that's what we're going to be chatting about today.
Absolutely.
So maybe walk us through your background a little and, how you got into what you do and why you love it so much.
Yeah. So my background is I grew up in Brisbane. And in terms of career, I kind of left school and I ended up falling into construction of all industries. I was a concrete batcher for Pioneer Construction Materials back in the day. And then I ended up falling into banking. I had, it was my last semester of uni. I was trying to do 3 subjects and work full time, and went to my boss at the construction company and said, can I have a couple of weeks off to finish my degree? And he said, no. So I rang my cousin at the bank and said, can you get me a job as a teller in 5 weeks time? He said, yes.
Right.
The rest is history. So I ended up spending 20 years in various roles in retail banking, on the customer side. So managing teams of relationship managers looking after, in one segment of the career, the mortgage broking industry of Australia. So spent a fair bit of time there, then made my way into what I call the bowels of the retail bank. So strategy, and worked under Matt Common and his team when Matt was the group executive of retail banking for CommBank, looking at strategy, then ended up running branch networks for a large credit union at the time. So yeah, that was 20 years of my life that went very quickly, and then left there in 2017 and started doing what I'm doing now, which is helping organizations of all forms and shapes and industries create workplace environments that people want to turn up to and give their discretionary effort and stay loyal.
And so what moved you in that direction? You obviously, had some experiences that kind of triggered that awareness and you moved into that direction.
Yeah. So I think the very early stages was my father was a consultant himself. He grew up in corporate land and then ended up consulting. And so at the age of 15, I'd be doing the Myers-Briggs type indicator personality profile, and we'd be sitting around the kitchen tables of family talking about our preferences. So I was exposed to this stuff quite early. But there was a few experiences as I went through the corporate world where I just got to the point of shaking my head saying, surely it can't all be this way all the time.
Yeah.
And so that kind of created this kind of deep intrinsic curiosity as to how this could be that we're in society and we work all 40 to 60 hours a week, and then we go home and then we sleep for 8 hours a night if we're lucky. So 60 or 70% of our life is either at work or asleep.
Yep.
And I got to the point of going, it shouldn't be like this. And so that has kind of driven me to dive deep into all different types of research and understanding the human condition and those types of things, which has led me to where I am today, which is really looking at how we can equip leaders of organizations or businesses to be able to read this stuff in their environment and do things about it that over time improve it for everyone, including them and their bottom line.
Wow. Which is pretty all encompassing. I mean, you're looking at all the different facets of the home life and work life of your employees and your team culture, and you're trying to kind of fit and mold something together that's going to work for everybody. So that's a pretty big job.
Yeah, it is. And when you go through that process of researching, and I pride myself, and I am pedantic about the fact that everything that I share with people has to be pragmatic, has to be implementable, has to be understandable for all types of humans. I've trained and facilitated sessions with supervisors in boning rooms of meat processing centers, all the way up to boards of organizations. And so the great thing is for me is that everyone I stand in front of is a human being. And so there's some real similarities in the fact that we're all human and we all go through these types of mental processes. But boiling all this stuff down, seemingly complex concepts and all these types of things, to real nuts and bolts and mechanics that anyone can understand and implement, I think is something I've been able to do well. But I also make sure that whatever I do is in that vein of pragmatism and actionable things for any human.
Yeah, and common sense and logic, and a lot of that. There's so much to be said about common sense.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
So simple, I totally agree.
Yeah, and I think that the power of the stuff too, and the real kick that I get that I love is when people share with me that they say, or they come back to another event and they say, "Oh, I tried that thing at home and it worked." So it's not only the work, it's any environment where people are gathered. But I live by the notion that if organizations and leaders can help their people improve their home life by increasing their capability around these things, it's a win-win, from a well-being perspective.
Absolutely. And, we've kind of just touched on the fact that obviously companies are doing a better job to retain their staff, but do you think that is the leaders, or is that the company in general, policies, or the policy, or the benefits, or the HR department?
There's a real juxtaposition at the moment because, you talk to any recruiter or recruitment firm, like we just had a chat and said there's oodles of jobs and not enough candidates.
Yep.
And so you can kind of make the hypothesis to say, well, organizations must be looking after their talent if recruiters are calling them and saying, no, I'm happy here and all those types of things. But then you look at, data that comes out from an organization by the name of Gallup, which measures employee engagement globally. And when you look at that data for Australia and New Zealand in their most recent report, 2023 report, there's only 22% of people that they consider thriving, which is people who are loyal, people who would say they love their job. And then you got 67% who are in the quiet quitting category, or I call it the meh. Yeah, it's okay. Kind of turn up, but
it's kind of going through the daily process,
daily grind. And then there's 11% that I call are actively trying to destroy their employer on a daily basis. So there's a real interesting dynamic going on at the moment in workplaces that I find fascinating. But generally speaking, I think, the data that I talk about mostly is the Gallup data. And, when you think about that 67% and 11%, we're talking 78% of people are spending 8 hours a day for 5 days a week, and then sleeping for 8 hours a day for 7 days a week, which is 60% of their life. They're either quiet quitting or hate their job or asleep for 60% of their life. And then you look at, the issues we're having around mental health and well-being and all those types of things. And these numbers are starting to kind of go, well, okay, logically, if someone's spending 60% of their life asleep or not engaged in it, then there's a real issue that we have to address there.
Absolutely. Hi, guys. Just a quick message. I'm always on the lookout for engineers in the managed services space across Australia, support engineers, systems engineers, network engineers, and solution consultants. I only work with the best companies that are going places, really value their staff, have great techs, and offer stacks of training and other benefits, up to $1,000 for successful referrals. Who do you know? Feel free to give me a buzz, 0414 659 800. But right now, back to the conversation. And do you think that, leaders are doing things a bit better than they did before, the same, and why do you think that is? I'm just
better.
That's
Yeah. And I think, if you track back 20 years, I mean, we go right back to the 70s and 80s where, command and control was alive and well. But really in the last 20 years, there's been much more emphasis and energy put into understanding concepts like psychological safety and its impact on the workplace environment, not only from a mental health perspective, but from a performance perspective. And if you look at the leadership literature that's coming out now, through your normal channels of university and those types of things, but generally speaking, there's been a real shift towards really understanding concepts of trust and psychological safety and the impact of leadership behavior on an environment, and those types of things. So I think in the last 20 years in particular, we as a society have been better at educating and building capability of leaders around this. Are we there yet? Absolutely 100% not. No. But if you look at the Gallup data, I think it was only 2014 in Australia and New Zealand, there was only 14% were in that thriving category. We're up to 22% now.
Okay.
Is 22% enough? No. But yeah, there's absolutely been a significant improvement, which is needed because when you look at the generational shift, so the needs and wants and desires of Gen Ys and millennials are vastly different to boomers and also Gen Xers.
Definitely.
And so I think the stat I read the other day was in 7 years' time, something like 45% of the workforce will be Gen Y and millennial.
Yeah.
And so we're starting and we're about to go into this massive shift of what a workplace environment is, what's needed in it, and all those types of things. So it's an exciting time. It's really,
and it is because, talking to some other people on the podcast and just in general, Like
Yep.
young people look for different things. They're looking
Yeah.
for connection and giving back to the world. They're much more socially conscious.
Yeah.
You know, they're very different to our generation and what we look for, you know, when we were looking for a role or a job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the message that I send, and it's a hard message for some people to swallow, is, you know, you can sit there and berate them or whinge about them as, you know, their work ethic or, you know, their resilience or these types of things that I hear all the time. But that's not a helpful position to take, because in 7 years' time, they'll be running the workplaces. So we've got to listen, and we have to adjust, and we have to bring them into the conversation, because it's going to change. And those that continue to take a position where it's just whinging, or it's their work ethic or this type of thing, I'm here to tell you, will be left behind.
Definitely. Like, it's all about trying to find out what are the drivers of your team, what are the drivers of your people, and just work with them. I mean, everybody's got different drivers, even regardless of generation. You know, everybody's different. We all have different drivers, but it's about the managers really sitting people down regularly enough to find out what makes them tick.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
And coming up with an agreement. I mean, that's the whole thing. Where, you know, leader says, well, my expectations are this.
Yep.
Team member says, well, my expectations are this.
Yep.
Let's bring them together and find a way to do that. The only way that conversation can happen is if there's a strong level of trust and psychological safety in that relationship and in that environment. Yep. If there's not, the team member's probably going to sit there and say nothing, or say something as quickly as possible to get out of the conversation.
Yeah, love it. And I wanted to see if you've got any data on this particular aspect. I mean, up till not so much now, but in the past, a lot of people were promoted to leadership and management level because they were good at what they did.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean, or didn't mean, that they were actually good leaders. It's a very different skill set. Are companies looking for different things now? Do you have any data on that, or just?
I don't have any specific data off the top of my head, but from my experience, I think it's changing, but it's not changing quick enough. There's still this mentality, and because the brain likes to focus on things that we can control and that are black and white, like the technical and commercial aspects. Yeah, Bob was really good at doing it. So let's put Bob in a supervisor role. And unless the organization has the right systems set up so that Bob's capability can be improved over a course of, you know, months when he becomes a supervisor, then Bob usually gets into the supervisor role and flails because he doesn't have the relationships, or he doesn't know how to build the relationships, or he doesn't know how to lead a team of people.
That's right.
So I would say that we are getting better. And you can kind of link that to, you know, to a number of things in terms of the increase in people who are thriving. But I think we've got a long way to go. And I think organizations, from a capability system perspective, have a long way to go to making sure that those systems are in place to support people who are jumping from being on the field to being the coach.
There's so much training that you can access these days, you know, whether it be proper corporate training to books, to podcasts, to whatever. I mean, there's so much information on this stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
Yeah.
You know,
yes.
But organizations definitely have to tap into.
Yeah. And I think, you know, one of the interesting stats from one of the industries I did a lot of work in was the onboarding programs of organizations, and the fact that onboarding programs, and it's a sweeping generalization here, but tend to be 30 days. Oh, you know, welcome to the organization, whether you're a leader or frontline, you know, in the next 30 days, you'll do X, Y, Z. And then after you're onboarding, boom.
Sink or swim.
Who can learn a job and be highly competent at it in 30 days.
That's right. And,
No one.
and particularly because you're learning it, in a silo on your own with some training material. You're not actually practicing it either.
Yeah. So there's a bunch more work we have to do, albeit, I think organizations are getting better at it.
Yeah, fascinating. Now, I want to chat about this fantastic concept of discretionary effort.
Yes.
I love it. So what does that actually mean? And tell us more about it.
Sure. So this is my attempt in boiling it down for people.
Right.
And so one thing I always say is people aren't the greatest asset to your business. And, that's quite a shocking statement. But it's really the collective mindset, behaviors and habits of your people that can be your greatest asset. And when we talk about behavior, if we boil that down, what is it that every single organization, every single leader in every single industry is going after? And that's discretionary effort. And discretionary effort is when someone chooses to go above and beyond what they're required to do when no one's watching.
Love it. Love that.
Yeah. And when people think about and internalize that, it's a yes. And most people have been in an environment where they were willing to give their discretionary effort every single day versus an environment they've been in where they would never in a million years give their discretionary effort. And so if people start to internalize their own experience with it, they can see it. And it's not discretionary effort when the boss is leaning over them. It's when they choose to do it when no one's watching.
That's right. I always like to say it's the difference between motivation and inspiration.
Yeah. And I ask business owners and team leaders and leaders of departments, if 90% of your people turned up every day and chose to give their discretionary effort, what would happen to performance?
Yeah.
And the response they get is, oh my God, it'd be bloody amazing. You know what? So, so that's discretionary effort. Holy grail is just, it's a metaphor for something that we all want, but it's hard to get. Yep.
I love it. And so so I mean, obviously that's the big thing, that separates the average employee from the incredible employee or incredible team member, is that they're willing to go above and beyond, and they take on the job and they take ownership of everything they do. It's not just doing it 9 to 5 and clocking in and clocking out.
Yeah. And from a leadership mindset, because creating an environment where people are willing to choose to give their discretionary effort on a daily basis is a bloody hard thing to do. Yeah. But from a mindset perspective, from a leadership perspective, if leaders are waking up every day and driving to work or catching the bus or walking from their kitchen to their home office, and they just say to themselves, what can I do today to create an environment where more discretionary effort is given? What's the 1 or 2 things that I can do today to do that? And if that becomes habitual for the leader, their lens, what I've seen from my own experience, your whole lens changes, and what you listen to and you're looking out for changes, and it comes off the spreadsheets and the KPIs and the where's this and where's that. And it really starts to change your mindset, therefore your behavior as a leader.
Yeah, it reminds me, the book, Think and Grow Rich, the book, How to Win and Influence People by Napoleon.
The old
Dale
school,
Carnegie.
Dale Carnegie.
It's a great book, and there's so many great little stories and anecdotes in that book that you can draw from with respect to exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff, I talk about has come from years of absorbing experience, but also heaps and heaps of books. Ones like that, Covey's 7 Habits, Turn the Ship Around by David Marquette. All these things, I've kind of soaked into the brain, and now starting to curate down into something that's pragmatic.
So the $100,000 question is, what do we do? How do we do it? Like, if there are leaders out there that are not really been given support and they're not quite sure how to do this, how to instill and inspire discretionary effort, where do they start? What do they do?
So you mentioned it in the intro. I've got a couple of I suppose frameworks to give people structure to think about this stuff. But the one in terms of what do I do as a leader? What should I be doing every single day to drive towards creating those environments? Or what should I be doing every day to maintain it? Because I've got one and I don't want to lose it. And that's the 3 habits.
Nice. Okay.
So the 3 leadership habits or business owner habits or be a great human being habits. And the first one is establish connections. Second is provide clarity. And the third is develop capability. And it starts with established connections because we're human and we're tribal in nature and we're pack animals. Human connections are the basis of our existence, right? That's how we've evolved. We have been successful on this planet because we're the smartest and we've done things in teams.
Definitely.
And we're hierarchical in nature, right? So we hunt in packs, right? And we operate in hierarchies. And so if you're a leader and you don't focus or you don't have the ability to create strong connections, not only with your people, but other people within the organization that you need help from on a day-to-day basis, then you're not going to be as successful as someone who can. Yeah. Right. And if you don't have a strong connection with someone, you're not going to be able to influence them. So it starts there.
Yep.
Provide clarity is uncertainty is kryptonite for the human brain. So our brain is always trying to protect us or stop us from dying. And so it's always trying to predict environments.
Yep.
And so it's got this thirst for clarity or certainty. And I always say structure liberates. So if someone knows the boundaries in which they can operate and they feel and they know they're on the same page as their leader, they feel free.
Yep. I love that.
Right?
I think that's so true. Like I say the same thing about in terms of creativity, in terms of organization. When you have a structure, you don't waste time and mental energy on all the other stuff, and you're so much more free.
Yeah, well, you're not worrying about I don't know this, and what about that, and where's this? Yeah. If you've got that structure and you've got that trust, that connection with your leader, you're off and racing. Creativity, innovation, complex problem solving, customer focused brain is in charge. The third one's develop capability. And this to me as a leadership habit is critical. And it does include professional development plans and making sure we know where people want to go in their career. And, let's get them on that course or those. Yes, it includes that, but that's not it. That's not the only thing. Develop capability is a leadership habit where every opportunity you get in a day with your team members, with your individuals, looking for opportunities to develop their capability. And an example of that is if you've got one of your team members that comes to you and says, Daz, I've got this X, Y, Z, and I don't know what to do. Can you tell me what to do? Yeah. You have 2 choices in that moment, which is to tell them what to do and they walk away none the wiser. Yeah. Or you ask them a question or you say, okay, righto. Imagine I'm not here. Yeah. And you've got no one else to talk to. What are the next steps you'd take?
Love it.
Right. Well, I'd probably do, I don't know really know. Well, I'd probably do X, Y, Z. Great. That's exactly what I was going to tell you. You know what you're doing.
Great.
Yep.
Love it.
And the only thing, the biggest thing I mention with these things is they're in that order.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so what I always say to people is if we're down in developed capability and someone comes to you, and provides you with feedback that you don't have a connection with, your brain will tend to say something like, thanks for your input, but it's irrelevant.
Yep.
And so
I don't trust you. I don't respect you. So whatever you
Yes.
say doesn't even register with me.
Yeah, cool, mate. Thanks. See you later.
Yeah.
And so, and on the flip side of that, if you're going to give feedback to someone and you've got a great connection with them, but there's a lack of clarity, the answer you're probably going to get is, oh, I didn't know how to do that. Oh, no one told me that. Right. And so whatever feedback you had is useless. And so how these things come together is do I have the connection with this human that is strong enough for me to influence them? Yes or no? Are we on the same page? Yes or no?
Yep.
If that's a yes and yes, then yeah, it's feedback time. It's let's develop your capability. If there's no to either of them, you know where to start.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Just a basic 3-part series.
Yeah.
For you to think about every single thing you do, every interaction you have with, someone in your team, is to just first think about those 3 things and are they all in place in the right order? And then you know exactly how to act.
Yes.
I think it's brilliant.
Yes. And then as a leader, you start to work on the dynamic of team members.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how's the 3 C's going in the dynamic of my team and where's it dropping off? And, you know, when team members get into conflict and leaders just say, oh, they're just having a whinge, or I'll just let them work that out. And they leave it, right? What happens to conflict when people leave it is it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And so, you know, being the coach in those environments is quite critical, and having that analysis tool to go, well, what's causing this conflict? Let's get it off the humans and get it on the process.
Yeah.
Yep.
And obviously, even within those 3 habits, there you can dive deep into each one of them, and they can spread out into hundreds of different things. But if you look at it as a whole first, then you can really start diving and focusing on different aspects of sharpening those 3 habits over time.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, love it.
Absolutely. And so the 3 habits are really the basis of you know what I speak about, the development programs I run, all of those types of things. That's the analysis tool that I use with all clients.
I think it's absolutely brilliant. Really, really great framework. And then what are the SHARPEN traits?
So the SHARPEN traits are, so this goes back to me trying to think about, you know, what are the traits in leadership that are the most powerful, and if you can combine them together as a leader, and you can do that regularly and consistently in your environment, that I would put my hand on heart and say you'll win. Yep. And they are, so the S is stand up, speak up, which is all about creating an environment of psychological safety.
Yep.
And the N at the bottom is never give up ever. And that's about personal resilience and how you develop resilience in your team. And then in between are the things and behaviors that people perceive from leaders that I think attract people to a leader. Yeah, that builds fellowship, that builds loyalty, that gives the leader the ability to influence and improve behavior. And so H is humility defines heroes.
Beautiful. Yes.
So that's about leaving your ego at the door, lowering your own self-importance, shut up and listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. The A is authenticity always.
Love it.
And that just comes from experience. And, you know, we're highly tuned social animals. We can tell if someone is talking BS.
Definitely.
Or we can tell if someone is hiding something from us.
Yep.
And I think being authentic in the workplace is one of the most difficult things to do consistently.
Yeah. I mean, what is it? 80-90% of communication is nonverbal. What are the facts these days? I don't know, 70, 80.
Yeah. So it's a 70, 20, 10.
Yep. There you
so,
go.
so 70% is visual, 20% is vocal, and 10% is verbal.
Wow.
Yeah.
10%.
Yeah. The R is for recognition drives repetition.
Love that.
And we are, by and large, in organizations, terrible at recognizing great behavior.
Yeah.
Because the human brain is wired for the negative, because of how we're designed. We're really good at picking up on stuff that's going wrong, or we can walk in a room and see everything that's wrong with it without trying.
Yeah. So true.
But what we know about the human brain and neuroscience, that if we get really good at recognizing specific behavior that we want repeated in the workplace, that person receiving the recognition gets a hit of dopamine, and then our brain tries to look for opportunities to do that behavior again because it feels good.
Yep.
Right. And so as a leader, if you can be specific in your recognition around certain behavior, that person will start to look for ways to do it again. And then the people around them who heard the recognition will start to look. And so over time, you start to change behavior through merely recognizing the ones that you want in your environment.
That's right. And a little thank you can go so far. I mean, you can lift the human spirit and have them walking on water for a week just by saying, "Great job, Steve. That was really great in the way you did that. I'm really impressed. Keep it up." You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But it's got to become habitual because it's not natural for us.
That's right.
To do. The P stands for positivity attracts potential. Beautiful. And what this is about is it's not about toxic positivity or that the person that walks into work every single day dislocated from reality going, "Oh, isn't it great around here?" And to me, it's about being productively positive, which is in the chaos and the madness. How do you bring people back to clarity to go, okay, it's bad at the moment. Yeah, it's been a terrible week. But why don't we think about the 3 things that we can do between now and the end of the day?
Yep.
So we can walk out of here, go home to our families, and feel like we got something done in the context of
Well, let's look for the lining, the silver lining. Let's look for what we can do, not what we haven't done, what we can't do.
Yes. And the human brain, the threat reward circuitries is, if you're negative all the time, people will see that as a threat. And what tends to happen is people will avoid you. So if you're sad or angry or upset all the time, other humans will just avoid you, right? If you're productively positive and you can lead people through chaos and some tough times, then you're like a magnet.
Yep.
People will go, "I want to work for Daz."
Yep.
Yeah, they'll go and talk to people who aren't working for Daz and say, "Oh God, you should come and work for Daz." Yep. Right? Yep. So positivity attracts potential, and that potential is the potential in other human beings. And the E, which is the biggest one for me, I think, is effectiveness demands empathy. And I think, empathy gets this, it's soft and you have to be really soft and fluffy and all these types of things. All empathy is your ability to recognize the emotional state that the other person is in that conversation at that time.
Yep. And just listen. Listen.
Just listen. Yep. Because we've all been there, right? Where you're frustrated or sad or angry about something, and you just go to talk to someone about it, and they look at your deadpan and they give you 3 logical solutions. Yeah. And it doesn't matter how good the logical solutions are. Yeah. You're like, "Oh, you don't get me. They're not listening. They don't get it." Right. And so if you want to build strong connections and you want to be able to influence people, then instead of giving the solutions first, say, "Daz, mate, I get it. If I was in your shoes right now, I'd be pissed."
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Or I've been in those shoes and mate, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yep. Or even just, "I totally understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And this is what we can or can't do."
Yes. Because then people can relax to go, okay, they've got it. Yep. Then you can go, okay, well, staying frustrated about it is only hurting us at the moment. So what do you reckon your next best step is? Yeah. If we just break it right down in the madness of what's going on, what's the best thing you could do in the next hour? Yeah, right. And then you got them engaged, like, "Oh, well, you're right."
Yeah.
When they start doing that, you've got them. But if you can't empathize, then you're not going to be able to influence humans over time. If you can't influence people, you can't lead them.
Yep. You can't affect any results if you can't do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the SHARPEN traits. And they again came out of, reflecting on what I experienced in workplaces, thinking about those times where I was really successful, thinking about the times in my career where I wasn't so successful and where I'd bug it up and how I'd bug it up. So, lots of introspection, and obviously SHARPEN because of my last name.
Yep. I think it's fantastic. I mean, you've broken it down so simply, but so effectively, and it's really all encompassing to the things that we think about. And I just love that a lot of the world is, over the last 5-10 years, have been giving much more emphasis towards the softer skills. The softer skills are becoming the hard skills now. Train someone to do anything, but if they don't come with the SHARPEN traits,
yes, you're in trouble.
What's the point?
Yeah. And I got my father drilled into me from a very, very young age. He always used to say the hard is soft and the soft is hard. Yeah. Which is the soft skills are the hardest to commit yourself to and execute every single day, particularly when you're upset or angry or sad, or you're in a really negative emotion. As a leader, how do you hold that and make sure that your focus is on the people in front of you?
That's right. And leaders are always under pressure to a degree. They're always shielding and fielding things from above, below, and they have to be able to tighten up this mechanism.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in my entire career in the workplace, I got angry once.
Wow.
And it was for about 3 seconds, and I will never forget it. Ever, 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 until I go to my grave. As I think one of the biggest lessons was that 3-second moment, where I let my negative emotion out. We always learn a hell of a lot more from pain than pleasure.
That's right.
Very
true. And something that I've learned, and I'm not the greatest at this either, but if you just take a couple of breaths before you respond, or take a few minutes before you compose that email in response, it's amazing the perspective that will change.
Yeah. I talk a lot about that in terms of resilience. There's a bloody fantastic thing called the Big Four for resilience, which is based off the work the Navy SEALs did, which is a combination of 4 actions that, when you're in the zone, is if you go through these 4 processes, magic. But yes, if you're in a negative emotion and you're about to interact with someone, don't do it. Walk away. Take 5. Have a moment.
Recompose.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
Mate, that's been absolutely brilliant. I just love it. I think there's so much that people can take home here, and there's so much gold in this. Obviously done a lot of research, and you've, taken from a lot of people that have been doing a lot of research over decades.
Yes.
To get all this information, but you've instilled it down and put it into such a really simple way of presenting it and of us learning it. But I'd love to give you a bit more time to talk about exactly how you work. Like, how do people work with you and engage with you, and what do you do?
Sure. So again, I've boiled that down to 3 things.
There you go.
So number 1 is I'm a keynote speaker. So I spend my days talking at all sorts of different conferences, whether that's for organizations or industry bodies, of audience sizes anywhere between 50 and 2,000, and I kind of tailor those keynotes to the themes of the conferences or the talks, as to what the clients want. Number 2 is I run team development programs, team and leadership development programs, and they're really customized too. They can be I do half days for small businesses right up to 9-day leadership programs in clumps of 3x3x3 in construction companies. I run an organizational wide field leadership development program for a large timber manufacturer in Australia. So anything in between, depending on the client. And the third one is culture diagnostics.
Oh, okay.
So just like we analyze and diagnose profit and losses and processes and machinery and all those types of things, I've got a number of methodologies where I can come in and diagnose an organizational culture and then provide that data and insight so leaders and leadership groups can make the right decisions about what interventions need to happen, where and when and how. So they're the three big things that I can contribute to organizations.
And with the last one, do you interview a lot of people and do a lot of group sessions to gather as much information as you can?
Yeah, so there's a couple of methodologies. That's one of them. So one of them is actually talking to people, having focus groups, that type of methodology. The other one is measuring psychological safety levels in teams. Okay. So a lot of organizations measure engagement. So they do that through employee net promoter score, or they use Gallup or those types of organizations. But the root cause of engagement is actually psych safety. So if you want to get to the source, and you're measuring engagement, you're measuring the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So this will measure psychological safety in teams and then correlate it to performance. So leadership groups can actually see commercial performance and psych safety and see the correlation, which becomes a much more powerful tool to influence leadership groups and executive teams to actually invest in things like leadership development, culture development, and those types of things.
And isn't it fascinating how that just brings everything right back to the first habit of creating relationship and trust?
Yes,
everything
correct.
Goes straight back to trust.
Yes, it's all interconnected.
Right back to the beginning. Fascinating.
That's right.
And if people want to find you, do just stevesharp.com.au, or what's your email?
So stevesharp.com.au, email steve@stevesharp.com.au, or if you look me up on LinkedIn. So I operate only on LinkedIn. So if you look up Steve Sharp, you'll find my big noggin there. I post really regularly, and I share all sorts of articles and videos of me talking about some of this stuff in different environments. So if you're interested, jump on there, send me a connection, and have a look.
Excellent. Absolutely. I'll put all those details in the show notes for everybody. And I think it's, there's been so much value in this episode. Everybody should really listen to this a few times. I'm going to listen to it a few times myself, because I think there's been so much great information to think about and digest. But I really want to also thank you for coming on the show. Really appreciate you taking the time. Might have to have you back again and dive into a bit more detail.
I'd completely love to. So, and thank you for the privilege, mate. I'm really honoured to be a guest on your podcast, and I'd love to come back.
Yeah, let's do it. Absolutely. But I always like to leave my guest with the last word. So what would you like to leave us with?
If you want to boil it right down and simplify it to one thing as a leader, is make sure that you have strong connections. Make sure you're allocating time and prioritizing your connections with people and making sure they are strong, because if you don't have them, everything else goes by the wayside. Connection, connection, connection.
I love that. And there's a great quote, or, I don't know what you call this, but, get away from the ivory tower and get down in the trenches with your troops. I think that's
absolutely
so powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Make it a priority.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, thank you so much, mate. I've absolutely loved that, and I'm sure the audience has as well. So really appreciate you coming in, and everybody out there, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We'll see you very, very soon for another episode of Soul Searching, the Soul Recruitment Podcast. Bye for now. Thanks again, Steve.
Thanks, Daz.
Thanks again for joining me for another episode of Soul Searching, the Soul Recruitment Podcast. If you'd like to join me as a guest on the show, I would be delighted to collaborate. Feel free to buzz me on 0414 659 800 or email me on darren@soulrecruitment.com.au. I'm always on the lookout for great guests who can share their stories and expertise with my community. But for now, though, have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time.